What if the person who hurt you the most was the one you trusted the most? Hi, friends. I hope this message finds you and your family well, safe, loved, and surrounded by peace. Today's story is not easy. It's not just a story. It's a journey through betrayal, courage, and the quiet strength of a child who refused to be silenced. And as you listen, I invite you to ask yourself, what would you do if a 5-year-old girl uncovered a secret so dark it could destroy everything she believed in? Let's begin this unforgettable journey. The morning sun spilled like honey over the garden, its rays dancing on wildflowers as little Ava skipped between them with bare feet and bubbling laughter. "Mommy, look," she called out, holding up a purple flower. "It smells like bubble gum." Her mother, Naomi, crouched down beside her, brushing back a curl from Ava's face. "Did you know," she whispered with a wink, "that a long time ago fairies used purple flowers to create magic?" Ava's eyes grew wide. "What kind of magic?" Naomi tapped her daughter's nose gently. "The magic of love. As long as you believe in love, Ava, you'll be able to face anything life throws your way." Every day with Naomi was like a dream, simple but warm and full of little rituals. Pancakes on Saturdays, lullabies at bedtime, stories whispered under blankets about fairies, stars, and fierce little girls. But none of them could have imagined how fragile that dream really was. The next morning, Naomi walked Ava to school like always. She knelt down to fix the bow in Ava's hair, pink, Ava's favorite, then kissed her forehead. "I've got a few errands, baby girl, but I'll pick you up early today, okay? Promise?" Ava clung tightly to her mother's fingers. "Promise," Naomi smiled. That was the last time Ava ever saw her mother. That afternoon, when the school bell rang, Ava raced to the gate like she always did, her eyes scanning the sidewalk for Naomi's bright blue scarf. But she didn't see it. Instead, the school principal approached slowly, her face heavy with something Ava didn't understand. "Sweetheart, come with me to the office," she said gently, laying a hand on the girl's shoulder. Inside the office stood Ava's father, Caleb. He wasn't looking at her, just stared out the window, his hands buried deep in his pockets. When Ava entered, he finally turned around, his eyes dull. "Your mom, she was in an accident," he said stiffly. "She didn't make it." The words hit Ava like a truck. "No, that's not true," she cried, backing away. "She promised me." Caleb didn't move, didn't comfort her, didn't cry. His silence filled the room like a thundercloud, and in that moment, the world Ava knew, purple flowers, bedtime songs, Saturday pancakes, crumbled. The days that followed Naomi's death were soaked in silence, heavy, suffocating silence. Ava, once a burst of sunshine in pink bows and flower petals, now wandered the house like a ghost. She clutched a worn-out stuffed elephant named Mr. Blue, a birthday gift from her mother, and sat in corners where Naomi's laughter used to echo. But the house no longer echoed. It swallowed sound. At first, Ava thought her father, Caleb, was just grieving in his own way. But it didn't take long to realize he wasn't grieving at all. He didn't cry. He didn't talk. He didn't even look at her most days. One evening, as they sat across from each other at the dinner table, Ava, summoning every ounce of bravery in her tiny body, whispered, "Daddy, remember how Mommy used to make pancakes on Saturdays? Maybe we could..." Caleb didn't even look up from his newspaper. "There's no point in talking about the past," he said flatly. "It's done. We need to move on." "Move on?" Ava stared down at her untouched plate. The peas looked sad, the mashed potatoes cold. She blinked back tears and hugged Mr. Blue tight. Because when words aren't welcome, silence becomes your only friend. Weeks passed. Ava stopped talking much. She stopped laughing completely. Her rosy cheeks turned pale, and the sparkle in her eyes faded to something hollow. She'd sit for hours in her room, whispering secrets to Mr. Blue as if he could answer. "Do you think Mommy's watching?" she'd ask. "Do you think she's sad like me?" Then one rainy Thursday, the doorbell rang, and everything began to change. Standing on the porch in a navy coat, hair frizzing slightly from the rain, was Margot, Naomi's mother and Ava's grandmother. She hadn't seen Ava since the funeral, but the second she stepped inside, her eyes darted to the living room. Once bright and cozy, it now looked like a forgotten motel lobby. But it was Ava who broke Margot's heart. The little girl sat curled on the couch, knees to her chest, face blank. "Hi, Grandma," Ava whispered, not even lifting her head. Margot knelt in front of her, reaching out. "Sweetheart, how are you doing?" "I'm fine." But her small, shaken voice betrayed the lie. "You're so thin," Margot murmured, tucking a blanket tighter around her. "Are you eating okay?" Ava nodded slowly, but her silence told Margot everything she needed to know. That night, as Ava slept, tucked beneath the blanket Margot had brought from her own home, the one with the embroidered daffodils, Margot went into the kitchen. Caleb stood by the sink, scrolling through his phone, a half-drunk cup of coffee beside him. "She's not okay, Caleb," Margot said firmly. "She barely eats. She barely speaks." Caleb didn't even glance up. "She'll adjust. She's 5, Margot said, voice rising. "You can't just leave her floating in grief alone. She needs you." "I'm doing my best." "You're disappearing." At that, Caleb finally looked up, his face cold. "You don't live here. You don't know what this is like." Margot's voice trembled now. "You're right, I don't, but I know what love looks like. And whatever this is, it's not love." No more words were exchanged, just cold air and grief. Before Margot left that night, she tiptoed into Ava's room. The girl was asleep, holding Mr. Blue like a lifeline. Margot brushed a curl from her forehead and whispered, "Naomi, I will protect her." "I promise." It was a Saturday afternoon, the sky outside blanketed with heavy gray clouds. Ava sat quietly at the dining table, coloring a picture of a garden with purple flowers, while Margot, her grandmother, moved through the kitchen, preparing soup from scratch the way Naomi used to. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that holds space for grief. Then, out of nowhere, Ava stood up. "I want to clean my closet," she said, barely audible. Margot smiled gently. "Want me to help?" Ava shook her head. "I can do it." And so she padded off to her room with Mr. Blue tucked under one arm and a small trash bag in the other, ready to clean, but not knowing what she was about to uncover. She dragged over a chair to reach the top shelf, one she had never touched before. There, buried behind a stack of old photo albums and folded scarves, was a small wooden box. As Ava pulled it down, a bundle of paper slipped out and scattered across the floor. Among the mess, one envelope stood out. It was pale pink, faded, and on the front, in neat slanted handwriting, were the words, "For Ava, if anything ever happens to me." Ava's breath caught. She knew that handwriting. It was her mother's. Her fingers trembling, she opened it. "My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you, and just writing that breaks my heart. I love you more than words can ever hold, and I always will. You are my greatest gift. But sweet girl, there's something I need to tell you, something I haven't been able to say out loud. Your father, he hasn't been himself lately. He's been cold, distant, angry. I've tried to understand it, to fix it, but it's like there's a shadow over our home, and I don't know what he's hiding, but it scares me. If anything happens to me, anything, you have the right to ask questions, to speak up, to be brave. Trust your heart, Ava. It will always tell you the truth. Love always and forever, Mommy. Ava sat frozen on the floor. Her mother's words rang in her ears like a secret she wasn't supposed to know. She didn't understand it all, but she understood one thing. Mommy had been afraid. Just then, Margot appeared in the doorway. "Ava?" she asked softly. "Everything okay?" Ava turned around, the letter clutched tightly in her hand. "It's from Mommy," she whispered. Margot's expression changed instantly, from curiosity to concern to alarm. "Can I read it?" she asked. Ava handed it over without a word. As Margot read, her face went pale. She sat back on her heels and stared at the letter, blinking hard. "She knew," Margot murmured. "She felt it coming. She just couldn't prove it. Do you think Daddy—" Ava's voice cracked. She couldn't even finish the sentence. Margot wrapped her arms around her tightly. "I don't know, baby," she said through a tight throat, "but we're going to find out. And we're going to do it together." That night, after tucking Ava into bed, Margot stayed at the kitchen table long after midnight. She read Naomi's letter again, then again, and suddenly all the pieces, the rushed funeral, Caleb's distant attitude, the speed with which he filed the insurance paperwork, clicked into place. Margot picked up her phone and called an old friend, Detective Ray Hammond, retired law enforcement. They hadn't spoken in years, but that night Margot's voice trembled as she said, "Ray, I think my daughter's death wasn't an accident. I need your help." The following morning, the house looked just like any other, quiet, still, a bowl of cereal, left half-eaten on the kitchen counter. But inside Margot's heart, everything had changed. Naomi's letter played, on repeat in her mind. "There's a shadow over our home." She watched Caleb closely at breakfast. His face, as always, was unreadable, calm, almost robotic. As he scrolled through his phone, Margot forced herself to speak casually. "Ava found a letter yesterday, something Naomi wrote." Caleb froze for a moment. "A letter?" he asked without looking up. She said she felt uneasy, that something was wrong. Margot's voice was light, but her eyes sharp. Caleb finally looked up. His tone stayed smooth. Naomi was always sensitive. She probably overthought things. "But what if she didn't?" Margot asked. "What if she was right?" Caleb's jaw tightened. He stood and poured himself another cup of coffee. "You're reading too much into things, Margot. Naomi's gone. That letter doesn't change that." But his voice carried an edge, too calm, too calculated, and Margot knew he was hiding something. Later that day, while Caleb was at work, Margot met with Detective Ray Hammond at a quiet diner on the edge of town. She handed him the letter. Ray read it slowly, his brow furrowing deeper with each line. "I remember the case," he said. "Single car accident, wet road. They said she lost control." "But Naomi was cautious," Margot insisted. "She didn't speed. She didn't drive recklessly." Ray nodded slowly. "You're not the only one who thought it didn't add up. I remember one of the texts saying something about the brake lines being worn, but it got written off." Margot leaned in, her voice low. She was scared of Caleb. "That letter proves it." Ray exhaled, rubbed his temple. "Let me make a few calls." Meanwhile, at home, Caleb's behavior started to shift. He noticed the change in Margot, the way she watched him, the way Ava suddenly avoided him. So he changed tactics. That night, he called Ava into the living room. "Sweetheart," he said, kneeling down with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "How about we go shopping tomorrow? You can pick out anything you want. Toys, clothes, ice cream, Just you and me." Ava hesitated. It had been so long since he spoke to her like this. She looked at Margot, unsure. Caleb smiled wider. "Come on, baby girl. I miss our time together." Margot watched silently. She didn't stop him, but she took mental notes. The next day, Caleb followed through. He took Ava to the mall, bought her an expensive dollhouse, and let her pick 2 scoops of mint chocolate chip. He laughed louder than usual, held her hand, acted like the father he never was after Naomi died. But Ava sensed something was off. It felt forced. At dinner that evening, Caleb leaned in. "You know, Grandma's getting older," he said softly. "She's trying her best, but she gets tired easily, right?" Ava frowned. "She's strong," she whispered. "I know, sweetie, but wouldn't it be better if it were just us again? A real family?" His words sounded sweet, but underneath they were sharp, manipulative. Margot overheard everything from the kitchen, and now she had confirmation. Caleb wasn't just neglectful, he was dangerous. In the days that followed, Margot launched her own investigation. She requested copies of Naomi's life insurance policies. She discovered Caleb had tried to change the beneficiary just days after Naomi's funeral, without telling anyone. She interviewed neighbors who remembered loud arguments at the house weeks before Naomi died. She dug through bank statements. She found financial transfers that didn't make sense. She called Ray. He listened carefully. "This isn't just a custody case anymore," he said. "This is turning into something bigger." One evening, as Ava sat drawing flowers in the living room, Margot knelt beside her. "Do you like spending time with Daddy?" she asked gently. Ava shrugged. "He's nice sometimes, but I miss Mommy. I feel safe with you." Margot's heart cracked a little, but her resolve grew stronger than ever. "I love you, Ava, and I promise I will always fight for you." Meanwhile, Caleb fought back the only way he knew how, with lies. He began telling friends Margot wasn't well, that she was too old, that she was overwhelmed. He even filed a report with child services claiming her house was unsafe. But Margot was ready. She had a letter, witnesses, financial evidence, and now Detective Hammond was working behind the scenes to reopen Naomi's case. Everything was building towards something big, something final. The courtroom was packed. Sunlight filtered in through high windows, but the air inside was thick, tense, almost electric. Every eye was fixed on the 2 people sitting at opposite tables. Margot Carter, calm and composed, holding Ava's small hand. And Caleb Walker, stiff and tight-lipped, jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. The judge entered. A firm, no-nonsense woman in her 60s. "We are here today to determine the custody of Ava Walker," she began, "and to address serious allegations of emotional neglect and potential misconduct surrounding the death of Naomi Walker." A hush fell across the room. Caleb's lawyer rose first, polished, confident. "Your Honor, my client is a devoted father who has faced unimaginable loss. He's cared for his daughter financially, logistically, and emotionally. This entire proceeding is the product of grief, deep grief, by a grandmother who means well, but is ultimately unequipped to raise a child." Caleb stood next, his voice practiced but hollow. "I love my daughter more than life itself," he said, pausing just long enough to sound emotional. "Losing Naomi broke me. I admit I've struggled, but I've done my best. This isn't about Ava. This is about Margot refusing to let go." He sat down. Margot didn't flinch. She just waited until something unexpected happened. A small voice cut through the courtroom like a whisper carried by thunder. "That's not true." Every head turned. Ava stood up. tiny, trembling, but unshakably brave. "My daddy," she said, her voice cracking. "He doesn't care about me, not really. He only started being nice after I found the letter." The judge leaned forward. "What letter, sweetheart?" Ava swallowed hard. "Mommy left me a letter. She said she felt scared. She said Daddy was different. And I heard him on the phone. He said the insurance money should have been his, and he said Grandma was going to ruin everything." Caleb leapt up. "She's 5. She doesn't know what she's talking about." "Mr. Walker," the judge snapped. "Sit down." He did, shaking. Margot gently pulled Ava close. "Your Honor," Margot said, rising, her voice steady. "This is the letter Naomi left. I've also provided documentation showing that Caleb attempted to change the insurance beneficiary just days after her death. The money meant for Ava's future. He tried to take it." She handed the folder to the bailiff. Inside, Naomi's letter, witness statements, financial records, a report from Detective Hammond confirming sabotage on Naomi's car brakes. Caleb's lawyer scrambled to respond. "Your Honor, my client had no knowledge of any foul play. Changing a policy after a spouse's death is not a crime." But Margot's lawyer fired back. "No, it's not. But the timing is, the secrecy, the emotional detachment, the pattern of behavior, and now the testimony of a child who had no reason to lie." The courtroom held its breath. Even the judge paused before speaking. "Mr. Walker, your behavior today, your financial dealings, and your failure to provide a safe emotional environment for your daughter all concern this court deeply." A recess was called. When they returned, the judge's voice was resolute. "This court finds sufficient evidence to award full custody of Ava Walker to Mrs. Margot Carter." Gasps. Tears. A whisper of relief swept across the room. Caleb sat frozen, color draining from his face. The judge wasn't done. Furthermore, based on evidence submitted regarding the death of Naomi Walker, this court orders the case to be officially reopened. Two bailiffs approached Caleb. "This isn't over," he hissed under his breath as they let him out. "No," Margot whispered, holding Ava close. "But you are." In the weeks that followed, Margot and Ava moved into a cozy 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had a garden. One afternoon, as they planted flowers, Ava looked up. "Do you think Mommy would like these?" Margot smiled. "I think she'd love them. You know, your mom always said, even after the hardest winter, something beautiful can bloom." Ava paused. "Like us?" Margot's eyes filled with tears. "Exactly, baby, like us. Ket Luan, I Jung, I Sai. Caleb was wrong, but why? Was he always evil? Probably not, but grief twisted into greed is a dangerous thing. Caleb let loss turn him inward, until love meant nothing and control meant everything." Margot was right, not just because she loved Ava, but because she acted when others would have stayed silent. She turned suspicion into truth, and truth into justice. And Ava, she was the real hero. At just 5 years old, she did what many adults never dare. She told the truth, even when it hurt. Bai Hak Root Ra, Grief Kong Sha Choem Lang. When something feels wrong, ask. And the smallest voice can change everything. If this story moved you, don't scroll away. Hit that like button, drop a comment. What would you have done in Margot's shoes? And subscribe to our channel, Black Women, for more powerful stories about strength, justice, and love. Because your voice matters, and so do the stories we tell.